have with us CA Ranjit, the FATCA service leader at Keypoint. Ranjit has over 15 years of consulting experience in MENA region and India. Ranjit has 12 years of experience with Big Four. CA Ranjit has served over 30 clients in MENA region on their FATCA program recently, and additionally Ranjit also heads IT consultancy of the firm. CA Ranjit is a chartered accountant, financial risk manager, and information system auditor by profession, and is coming to us with the final presentation of today and this seminar, the key to FATCA, a point to take. Please welcome CA Ranjit. I would now call upon CA Meenakshi Sundaram to please come and give a bouquet of flower. The stage is yours. We are willing to hear for next 30 minutes.
A very good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really here to talk to you about tax law, which has actually got about 57 countries as of today, and probably all financial institutions across the world working towards getting it implemented as on 1st of July 2014. And probably this is for the first time in the global history of taxation ever has a tax law been implemented outside the jurisdiction of a country where it was actually passed as a law. So why did such a law ever get passed? Why does 57 countries today and counting, because this number of countries is increasing day by day, who are willingly and with all their interest getting this whole law passed as their own law and getting it implemented in their country so that not only they, but all institutions in their country, most likely a lot of people in their country, will comply with this to serve a purpose which was defined in one part of the world, which is United States. So the agenda today really is to kind of give you a background of what this whole acronym FATCA is all about, give you an overview of what FATCA means, not only to the United States, but to each one of us. And I would like to just walk you through what you, as probably individuals and maybe as representatives of organizations, may have to do to address FATCA within your organizations. And probably to the end, I would like to end with what is this whole idea about governments of various countries trying to implement this as their own law, what it means in a country where a law has been passed, like places like India, which has actually agreed to implement FATCA. What does it mean to institutions which are based there? So what's really this whole term FATCA? FATCA, as we started by defining this session as such, it's really Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, bit of an acronym. But if you go and see the US tax law, which was really passed in 2010, there is no terminology called FATCA there. It's all about Chapter 4 of the internal, what we call as the Tax Revenue Code there. So the Internal Tax Revenue Code really has a new chapter added, which is called the Chapter 4, and it was added way back in 2010. I myself started working on FATCA-related consulting in 2011, and one of the things when we used to go and meet clients at that point of time, most of the clients used to come and really have a journey with us, and this is what my service line leader at that time used to say. It was a journey for most of the clients. It used to start with largely ignorance of what this whole terminology is. Most of the time, we would sit with the clients. They would never even get the acronym correct because it was completely foreign to them. And then the next part would really be what we call as disbelief, and to say that this really doesn't apply to me or to my organization. And we used to end the meeting with acceptance and to say, what do we really need to do to address this? So today my objective is really to take you through this journey which people have gone through in the last about 3 years and may continue to do so in the near future, in the next 30 minutes as we spoke about. So FATCA really, as we say, it stands for Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. It's a US tax law. Whole objective of this law is to identify US persons, and it's a bit of a broader term, who actually have invested their money outside and to get their information back to the tax authorities in the US. The whole idea is to say, how do we find who is a US person across the whole world and identify them, get their information and pass it across to the US tax authorities. Why? Because US tax authorities want to get a little bit more tax than what they're getting today. And this really is one of the reasons why a lot of countries, as we said at the start, that 57 today, counting and actually adding on to the list, are interested to see why FATCA may succeed. Because every country really sees that there are a lot of people who stay outside their own home country, invest, make a lot of money. Is there a potential to get some of this money back to their home country so that their taxation can be beefed up? So they really started this whole law because in late 90s, early 2000, there was this belief that a lot of capital is being moving out of the US, being invested in a pretty good emerging economies, be it India, China, Brazil, wherever it is, earning a lot of money because these were riskier economies, giving a good opportunity to make a better return. And companies and investors were all looking to be kind of doing a good business, happy, as well as there were a lot of investors who were even otherwise moving money to tax havens. Now, as per the US tax law, the requirement is whether you stay in US or outside, you need to pay taxes to the US government. So they work on a global taxation system. So their view was if people are making money outside India and on a larger basis, their taxation or their tax collection should not have come down. But when they started tallying their books, they really saw that US economy is not doing well. Taxes and collection of taxes were actually on the downslide. They're not making enough money. And there was this belief that a lot of money which is now outside the US, which were actually taxable, were not getting taxed. And they started taking tax actions on various institutions, especially financial institutions outside the US. And what they really found was a bit staggering because they never thought this kind of money were actually outside the US. And these were pretty large and significant amount of money. And the belief which was there actually started becoming stronger and stronger that a lot of money is residing outside the US, which has never been taxed and which is escaping the tax net. And now since there was this huge pressure on addressing be it the current account deficit or the larger issue of getting government finances into shape, the government really had two choices. Either they start taxing the local residents more or try to get this money which is outside the US back into the economy. And politically and from an overall economy perspective, it was felt it is better to go out of after this money which is outside the US first and get that money back home to see how it can help the economy. But when they looked at their legal structure, the tax structure, there were no enough capability to go after these people, get the information and tax them as such. So that was the genesis of FATCA. So you probably will start seeing a lot of relevance of this particular law, not just in the US, but in a lot of places outside the US as well. And what US said is if we want to really make this law effective, we need to start getting information about people who have invested outside the US, pass it back to the taxman in US, who can then go after them as per the local taxes in US, tax laws in US. So then they debated, where do we get this information from? Who is going to give us this information? Nobody is going to willingly give this information to them. So what makes it work for them? So they said in US, they always get the best information about taxpayers through their banking or financial systems as such. And as always, in US, they always believe what they do is correct. They said it can be done outside the world as well in exactly the same way. So when the law was passed, they said any institution which is outside the US, which is in the financial intermediation business, will be called as foreign financial institution. And in a very typical US way, they said every foreign financial institution is given a choice. They can either participate in the FATCA program or they can decide not to participate in the FATCA program. So just by being a financial institution, be it a bank, be it an investment company, be it a life insurance corporation or a life insurance company which provides cash value life insurance product, you need to start looking at this law just to decide whether you want to participate in this program or not participate in the program. So just by passing this law, they made every financial institution across the world to look at this law, which was alien to them, because they're saying this is a law which is applicable for financial institution outside the US, which generally doesn't come under the tax ambit. So you are a bank based in Bahrain, based in India, wherever, you need to start looking at this law to decide, do you really want to participate in this? Does it really make any sense to you? So at least that minimum activity needs to be done. So it just became relevant to every institution across the world just by defining foreign financial institutions which are outside the US as foreign financial institution. And if an institution decides to participate in FATCA, they need to do three things. They need to look at their customer base, anyone who comes new after 1st of July, plus anyone who already exists as their own customers today. They need to know how many of them are US and how many of them are non-US, which was never done in the past. So you may have had millions of customers whom you do not know whether their US status exists or not. So that's one commitment you do if you participate in the program. Second is, if you identify anyone as US, you take the responsibility of reporting all relevant information to the US tax authorities. And third is to say that if somebody decides not to cooperate with your analysis to identify them as US or non-US, you classify them as non-cooperating, or they use a term called recalcitrant, and apply certain withholding tax on them on any US source income which comes to them. So you take these three responsibilities on yourself to apply and comply with FATCA as such. Now, one of the major challenges in this whole process was reporting of information, because banks and financial institutions are bound by what we call as confidentiality of customer information. So it is very difficult for them to report information to a non-regulator or to a regulator who is not locally managing them. So to address that, what United States said is, we will agree with the governments of each country to arrange for passing relevant laws which will allow either the financial institution to directly send this information to the US, or they can be locally collected and one of the government entities could pass this information to them. So that was the whole idea, to say that the governments get involved. And as I started by saying, now as of today, 57 countries have said they will agree to adopt this law and apply it as their own measures as such. So I'll not go into details of this particular slide. The whole idea here was to tell you that this whole thing started in 2010, where it was a law. And as I said, a lot of us who were involved in consulting work started talking to clients at that point of time. So when the law was passed, it was passed as what we call as the HIRE Act, the Hiring Incentive for Restoration of Employment Act. So FATCA was a part of it. So if you really see, the idea was to get money back to US from the non-taxpayers, but it also had one side effect, which was really to say it helped significant amount of employment creation opportunities, not just in US, but across the world. As I said, I started myself consulting on FATCA 3 years ago, so I've been working on this for the last 3 years, hopefully for a few more years on this. And there are many more people like me who have been working on this across the world as such. So in a way, as a law which was passed, it also assisted not just in looking at tax and collection of information about people, but creating employment opportunities, creating a new area of work, not just for consultants, but for software professionals, for even tax authorities, because even today, tax authorities, not just in the US, across the world are involved in getting this whole law implemented as such. So it indeed had an impact on the employment opportunities across the world, and it continues to kind of create. In fact, I know of financial institutions and banks in the region who have created designations for FATCA related work, and they are employing people for doing this particular activity as such internally as well. So it has been a journey, because it was a law which was conceived in US for the first time ever to implement a tax law across the world. And they started by saying there has to be certain framework which needs to be put in place, which started again in 2010, and it continues to evolve. Even today, we really see significant changes, new regulations coming in as we speak. Now, what needs to be done if you really want to comply with FATCA? What are the key things which needs to be done? It's again, because it's the first time ever it's being implemented, and a number of activities need to be done to complete the implementation of FATCA. The whole process has been staggered over a period of time. As one of my colleagues says, these are dates, not those romantic or exciting dates, but these are dates which are a bit threatening. If you don't comply with these dates, what you really see is financial penalties, actions coming to them. So when we speak of these dates, they don't really kind of look too exciting, too nice to people, but then you need to be aware of those. You need to kind of respect those to be ready to kind of comply with that as such. Now, the most important dates here really is 1st of July, because most financial institutions need to be ready with their changed processes, systems to ensure that when a new customer walks into their office, as on 1st of July, they are able to identify the person as US or non-US. And going forward, starting from 2015, anyone whom they have identified as a US person, they need to report about them to the US tax authorities. And they need to start also applying certain withholding tax. It applies at 30% of any US source income which the person would have received if they decide not to disclose their information. So for example, you as a non-US person, maybe an Indian citizen, maybe Canadian citizen, and if the bank asks you, saying that, can you tell us whether you are a US person or not? And you decide not to disclose that, because most of the time, a lot of banks send you forms for you to fill in. And as customers, most of us tend to ignore them because we don't see it as relevant to us. Now, if you decide to do that, the bank may classify you as a non-cooperating customer. And if you are investing through the bank into, let's say, US securities, you're getting certain dividends from US shares, there is a potential that they may take 30% of that money away. And starting 2016 onwards, it is not just the dividend or your income which may get impacted. It's even the capital. So if you have invested in US securities, they will probably not take just 30% of the dividend. If you sell the shares, they'll take the total 30% of the total return which you get on that. So it becomes quite important for each one of us to be aware of this, because if we do not cooperate with the financial institutions with whom we maintain relationship, you being a non-US person could also be subject to withholding as such. And then this continues to 2017 as well and beyond. And they're saying, because there is a potential for people to hide behind participating financial institutions, they are bringing up section which they are calling it as pass-through rules, whereby every institution will calculate a ratio of what they earn from US and what they earn on a total basis, and income outside the US. So a bank in Bahrain generating income in Bahrain, but having a small portion of US income, could also then start applying withholding on Bahrain-based income as well. So if you get an interest on a deposit with a local bank, a part of it may get withheld upon, just because you have decided not to share information about them starting 2017. So FATCA has significant impact, as we really see, not on just a US person, but even on us who are non-US as well. So one of the central question, as we said at the start, is the whole idea is to identify a person as US or non-US. So how do you know whether a person is a US person or not? So it's not just the nationality, it goes a bit beyond that. So it could be a person who is really kind of born in US, but it could also be other factors. So I'll just probably go to that slide first. So a person who is identified as a US is a person who has a US passport, who is US national, quite fair. A person who is tax resident in US. So let's say it's a person who has got an Indian passport but a green card. That person is also identified as a US person under FATCA as such. More interestingly, which is more applicable in this part of the world a lot more, is it's a person with a Bahraini passport with a place of birth, which is New York, is also identified as US. And then there are a few other indicators of US status, like if somebody has an address which is given to the bank, which is a US address. If somebody has given their contact number, which is a US contact number. If they have got a standing instruction, and this is quite relevant, if you have a standing instruction to transfer money to an account with a US address. So let's say if you have your son or daughter or any relative studying in US, and you've given your bank an instruction, a standing instruction to transfer money to their account on a month-on-month basis, on a quarterly basis, or whatever it is, you may start getting identified as a US person. So what you really are seeing is there are a lot more indicators, not just about US passport. A lot of us who may not have any US passport or US tax resident status may also get identified as a US person, potential US person, let us say. And once you get identified, it's your responsibility then to provide additional information to the bank to classify you as a US or non-US. So you need to do certain additional steps. So that's again what really is important for you to look at from your perspective as an individual. And for a bank, you think of it, how many additional steps they need to do if their customer base is significantly large. And FATCA doesn't apply only to individuals, it applies to corporations, entities as well. So if it's a Bahrain-based company which has 10% or more US ownership, they're also identified as US, and these companies are then required to disclose details of these US persons who have 10% or more ownership in them. So again, it starts kind of getting wider. So if you really see, FATCA's objective is to get information about US person, but when they say US person, it's a little bit broader than just having a US passport. And I would just like to highlight one point here, which relates to people born in US. Anyone who is born in US having a passport which is non-US, they will be asked to do two things by their bankers. One, they'll be asked to give a form which is called Form W8-BEN to confirm that they are not a US person. In addition to it, they will also be asked to give a certificate of renunciation of their US citizenship. So now in US law, if you are a US person, you're born in US, by definition you are a US citizen, whether you have applied for a US passport or not. Now when this person goes to renounce their citizenship, one of the first things the US authorities are going to ask is the previous tax returns. So you think of a person who is a high net worth individual, who is maybe a client of yours or you yourself, and now you go to the US authorities to renounce your US citizenship, and if they want you to pay the last 7 years taxes before they give you this certificate, it can be significantly a large liability you may be undertaking on yourself. So what did the US do to kind of make all these financial institutions outside the US agree to do this whole thing about FATCA, to implement all these changes, because these are significant expenses which banks have to undertake to address FATCA as such. So what they said is, if a bank decides not to participate in FATCA, they will be subject to 30% withholding on any US source income they as a bank get or any of their customers get. So which really means for banks, if they want to not participate in FATCA, they need to look at their investments, their balance sheet. 30% of anything which is US denominated, consider it as lost. And that can be very significant for most of the banks. And hence, it almost became a non-option, not a valid option for most of the banks to not participate in FATCA. So everyone had to kind of go and participate in FATCA. So if your bank participates in FATCA, it implies that you as a customer will also be asked to disclose your US status. And you will have to provide this information. So by just passing this law and creating this cascade, what US has done is globally, every institution which is in financial intermediation, they will look at their customer, identify people who are US, and pass this information to the US tax authorities, either through the local government or directly to the US tax authorities. Once the information is received, what they will do is they will then go after these persons to say, where is your tax return? If you've got $1 million in Bahrain, where did you get it from? And once you disclose that and you have not paid taxes on that, they will start collecting this information. So we talk a lot about India having this major issue of people investing abroad, and a lot of black money, so to say, has been stashed outside. So think of it, if a framework like this is created on a global basis, and if countries like India also piggyback on this framework to say, if US can get information about their citizens through the banking circles or through the banking framework, and if other countries also say, we would like to make this a bilateral arrangement across the world where all such information collected are shared across the countries, this would make it very difficult for anyone to use the proper established banking circles to evade taxes as such. And the impact is already been seen where a lot of tax havens across the world are really revisiting their strategy to say, can they continue to be in business as tax havens? Because if they have to disclose information about all their investors and they're going to be taxed in their home countries, they would rather not come to these tax havens as such. So that's the reason why FATCA is being talked about a lot nowadays. Why? Because it has significant impact on the way people are doing business today. The way the taxation system is being operating as of now is bound to change in future as such. Now to make FATCA work, what do institutions need to do? They need to look at 4 things. One, they need to understand what this whole thing FATCA is about. Do they form part of a financial institution as defined under FATCA? Because for a bank, it's easy to define. But you may have investment companies, small investment houses. Do they come under FATCA or not? It's an important decision to be made. If you are impacted by FATCA, what do you need to do to implement it? And if you do implement it, what do you do after implementation? So there are few steps which each institution needs to undertake to address FATCA as such. I'll just quickly walk you through in the next 5 minutes what are the key steps institutions which are implementing FATCA needs to do kind of over a period of, I would call it anything from 3 to 4 months to, for the large global institutions, over the last 2 years, and some probably had started even earlier than that. What we really see is, because this is a program which impacts significant aspects of business, because if you need to identify customer status, you need to involve business people who are involved in customer relationship management, onboarding customers. You need to have people who are at the management layer, because there are quite a few strategic decisions which needs to be made. You may need people from the support, operations, as well as tax-related persons involved. So it requires multiple skills to all come together to first even understand what's the level of impact on the organization. So setting up the right team within the organization is quite an important task. And then second, to assess the impact of FATCA on your organization. Do you really come under the ambit of FATCA as such? If yes, then you need to start taking steps to implement various changes in your organization. There has to be process changes, because today none of the organization across the world, none, have ever had procedures to identify who is a US person, who is not a US person. So for all banks, for all life insurance selling organizations, they need to now look at their process to say, what do we need to do to know who is a US person, who is not a US person? Once they know that, they need to now have mechanisms to capture this information in their IT systems or records as such, and then report this to the US authorities. So there are steps which needs to be done. But most importantly, one of the key things which the organization has to do is to make certain strategic decisions. As a bank, as an insurance company, or as an investment entity, would you like to deal with a US person going forward? Would you like to deal with a bank which is not participating in FATCA? Would you like to decide whether you would like to continue dealing with people who do not disclose their US status? And these are strategic decisions, because these impact the business of the organizations. And these needs to be then codified into a policy of the organization to say, what do you do with these? Do you want to deal, not deal? Do you want to continue making changes to the customer base you want to look at? And then there are certain legal obligations, because as we said at the start, because FATCA involves disclosing information about customers to a third-party regulator who may end up having certain tax liabilities, there has to be adequate legal clauses put into your customer onboarding forms to protect the institution, to say what do you need to do to protect and get a waiver from customer confidentiality right. So the legal team needs to be involved to help design what are the changes required to address FATCA as such. So overall, it involves various steps which has to be done across the financial institution. So it's just not a silo where you could decide a compliance team or an IT team can address all FATCA needs. It requires to be a concerted effort across the organization involving very senior executives, because you also need to have dialogue, communication with your central bankers as well. Now, one very important thing as a key step to implementing FATCA within the organization is to decide what is the nature of your entity, what kind of organization you are, and how FATCA impacts you as an organization. So what we have seen, a lot of times, there is a bit of an ambiguity on the level of impact of FATCA on the financial institution as such. So one area where you can minimize the effort for implementing FATCA within a financial institution is to analyze whether you can benefit from some of the exemptions available under the law. If you can follow those exemptions, you can probably reduce the level of compliance requirement. So one area where I would really suggest for people who are from financial institutions here to look at is to say, can you look at those exemptions? If you can fall into that exempt categories, you can benefit by ensuring that you have a lower compliance need as such. So there are exemptions like if you are an entity which only needs to support activities within the banking group, you may not need to register and have a compliance step under FATCA as such. Certain government organizations, they are exempt under FATCA as such. So if those are analyzed well, the institution can benefit by having a lower compliance need as such. Now, one of the most important area under FATCA is to make changes to the customer onboarding activities. Here, what we are really looking at is when a customer walks into the organization, how do you analyze their US status? How do you know whether this person is US or not? Maybe just by looking at it, because if you find a person with a cowboy hat walking and saying howdy, maybe you might say this is US. But that's not sufficient. You need to have a codified measure to say whether those indicators of US status have been analyzed and have you found whether this person is US or not. So you might find each one of us, when we start opening new bank accounts after July, we may be asked by banks to tell them specifically, are we a US national? Do we have tax residence in US? Or are we born in the US? So for each one of you who may have, let's say, a green card, if you are born in the US, if you have never filed taxes in the past, you may now need to start thinking what kind of liability you may be incurring on yourself and what are the steps you may need to take to ensure that you are well protected. Because all banks will ask you these questions. Once this information is captured, the institutions then need to plan how do they capture these information onto their IT systems. What changes in IT systems are required. And again, one of the most important changes which institutions will have to make is for banks with branches, let's say an HSBC which operates across the world, they need to now train every customer-facing executive to find out how this person is to be classified as US or non-US. So getting people trained and ready to know the status of a person whom they are onboarding as US or non-US becomes quite an important task as such. And these changes needs to be designed now and need to be ready by 1st of July as such. As I said, legal changes are extremely critical. What we are really seeing is as a customer, most of the individuals will now be asked to sign off on a form which will tell the bank that they waive their rights to confidentiality and they allow the bank to disclose information to the US tax authorities. So if you are a US person and if you are identified as a person with US indicators, you may be asked to allow the bank to share the information with the tax authorities. Once shared, you may have tax liabilities in US which you may need to address as such. As I said, the policies will need to be codified. The few indicators which I spoke to you earlier as well is the organization has to decide which customers they will deal with, which they will not, what kind of changes will they make in internal procedures, what kind of training arrangement they will make. So these are all required to be codified in the system. So you may find in future certain banks, if you have a US status, may tell you that they wouldn't like to deal with you. If you do not disclose certain information, most of the banks may decide not to deal with you. Now also, one more activity which the US authorities have undertaken is to ensure that all institutions are identified clearly. They have created a mechanism for registration for all institutions and they have decided to give an identification number to each of these institutions as well. And the expectation is, they called it Global Intermediary Identification Number or GIN, and these numbers can then be used across the world to probably identify institutions uniquely, and these information can then be shared across countries as well. So what we really see is the GIN number could be a precursor to global information exchange, and this could also mean, let's say tomorrow Indian government or any of the other countries want to collect information about their taxpayers, it could be collected using this framework which US is setting up. I'll just basically kind of move on to some of the very critical areas which I just wanted to highlight. One is the reporting related information. So for anyone who is identified as a US person, this expectation is the customer's account balance and the income which the person would have received from the bank or the insurance company, they would be reported to the US tax authorities. Now what is expected that once this information is available with the US authorities, they will use the tax identification number of the person to connect the information gathered from banks and the information submitted by the person in their tax return. And if they find discrepancies, the person would then be asked to provide additional information or pay additional taxes as such. So this way, what they're saying is information on taxable income of US citizens who are outside the US will be available with the US authorities. And these information can then be used by the US authorities to apply additional taxation on these persons. Today, as per The Economist, which was published in 2013, they're saying there's about $2 trillion worth of US assets which are outside the US which has never been taxed. And they're saying even if they get a fraction of this money back to the US using FATCA, it can play a significant role in addressing the current account deficit or other deficits. And what we are also seeing, as I said at the start of the section as well, is there are governments across the world who are now cooperating with the US for implementation of FATCA, which is through the Intergovernmental Agreement. And once this framework of agreement between US and all the countries of the world are in place, the expectation is this would be then expanded to cover all other aspects of information exchange across the countries on taxation related aspects as such. So what I really want to close the session with is to say FATCA is here really to stay. It would mean for financial institutions significant investments to make changes to their policies, to their procedures, to their systems, training, so on and so forth. For each one of us as individuals, it would mean additional information disclosure, which we'll have to make to the financial institutions to identify ourselves either as a US person or a non-US person. FATCA is more of a society-wide program because it just doesn't impact the financial institution. It impacts each one of us as individuals. It impacts businesses as well. It is complex because it is for the first time it has been rolled out where a tax law which is passed in US, which needs to be understood by people outside the US and complied with, for which information will be shared with the US authorities as such. It takes 2 to 3 years to overall implement FATCA, so it is not a program which you can do it in a year and get away, and it is a continuous process beyond that as such. But most important is to implement FATCA-like regulation, it requires each business to look at themselves, each financial institution to look at themselves, understand the impact, and you can decide to have a very large program like global banks, or you can have a small program which is totally aligned to your requirements as such. What I would like to close this session with is to say FATCA is like any other tax-related regulations. When you go into a taxman's office, you may need to kind of watch your steps. When you get out of the taxman's office, you may need to watch your language because you do come with a situation where you probably are not wanting to kind of be happy about. So the same way, when you get into FATCA, you need to kind of watch your step, ensure that you get it right. But there is really no way out of FATCA, so getting out of the taxman's office or FATCA, you need to really watch your language because you may kind of not be in the right mood to talk about it, or you may use languages which may not be the best and easy way to communicate your frustration with the regulation. Thank you. Thank you a lot for being here today. And I also like to thank the Bahrain chapter of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on it.
Thank you very much, C.A. Ranjit. May I now call upon C.A. Suresh Surana to please come and hand over BCICA memento to our speaker, C.A. Ranjit. You keep clapping.